After much consideration and really giving a long moment of pause to reflect upon this issue and discussing it with my psychologist, she's helping me out on this, and we have had long conversations about it. Well, I now know the core of my problem, your problem, everybody's problem, and how we have come down to this. It's because of this piece of shirt right here. Look at him, just look at that face. One day he decided he wasn't appreciated enough, and then decided to come out of the water and started to waddle about with that stupid smirk on its face. And from then on, everything turned into a ride down from Willy Wonka town to absolute dog shit. Just look at him. I'm vegan, but in reprisal, I would eat this silly prick. Get fucked, you absolute socket muppet. Hello, my dear friends, how is it going? I'm Arith, and today I'm here to talk about a subject which, well, perhaps by the title of this video alone, some of you won't even bother to listen to this because you have already decided to be offended by a concept that is probably messing up with your sense of morality that solely revolves around your self-centered comfort. However, for the great majority of you, this might be a reassuring perspective, hopefully, especially for those who struggle with an animistic approach to life and their own crafts in a society that is increasingly becoming more self-aware of the impact of its actions upon the world that surrounds us and the issues concerning angering souls and the terrible repercussions on a spiritual level, which very much affects the spiritual existence of us all. I'm not here specifically to talk about veganism. For that, I recommend you to check Ed Winters, which I met in person this year, and a great guy, down to earth, very polite and very humble, and with a tremendous amount of patience, as well as Joey Carbstrong, whose background and process through veganism is not so different from my own, concerning a life of violence and how we struggle to become more empathic human beings, right? I'm here to talk about an issue which has bothered me for some time now. Some of you know that I am a vegan. I have been vegan for 5 years, and I'm on my way to complete my 6th year of being a vegan. It was definitely one of the very few best life decisions I have ever taken. However, for those of us who haven't been vegan since childhood, when we become vegan, there's obviously a whole process of and a lot of questions concerning certain things we use. Veganism isn't solely about a plant-based diet, but there's a whole multiplicity of realities dealing with several morals and values, focusing on living a more sustainable life and to minimize as much as possible, of course, all the harm we do with our existence. If we can live life without causing unnecessary harm, why wouldn't we? So, one of the things that is bothering me as a vegan is that for 15 years, I've been using a hand drum made out of animal skin. I've been a vegan for 5 years now, as I said, but I still use it. Not just for my experimental solo music project, which, as of the taping of this video, doesn't even have 4 months, but it has been an important companion in terms of my own spiritual path or spirituality and my own craft. Traditional folk magic, let's call it that, witchcraft, which has increasingly become more animistic for me, and as such, the awareness towards persons of the world, including the unseen populations and the entities we often call spirits, has become an important focus of my own spiritual work. Because the more you are aware of the impact of your existence and actions and choices on the world, the choices you have upon the world, that impact, the more we develop our empathy and we become a lot more careful in the way we treat and behave towards land and its persons, and not just human and animal persons, of course, but all persons. Obviously, veganism exists within animism, but an animistic person doesn't have to specifically be vegan or become vegan to be an animist or to become an animist. However, the more you deal with the world and its persons, the more you think about others' consciousness, right? Their own lives, their own communities, their own struggles, wishes, desires, and the way they live and want to live. And if we look into animistic cultures, when it comes to the killing of an animal, this is usually a breaking of taboo. And as such, there's a lot of procedures to rightly propitiate the spirit of the animal to avoid all sorts of harmful outcomes due to breaking taboo. Taking a life and angering the spirits that may seek revenge. Like the book of Graham Harvey, on animism, of course, respecting the living world. It ultimately comes down to this, in a nutshell. And when face to face with a life that doesn't want to die, doesn't want to be killed, wants to actually live, this has a huge impact in the way we perceive basically everything. But this is a subject I've talked about on other videos before. And by the end of this video, I'll leave 2 suggested videos on the subject which you might want to look into. You should definitely look into that. Now, concerning my drum, you may say, Arith, who gives a shit? And that's right. No one actually gave a shit or said anything about it. This is something that bothers me, and I know some of you are passing through the same or similar struggles and questions, and you question yourselves, right? Because there's actually a lot of vegans who are also into witchcraft and in a spiritual endeavor and they ponder about the use of certain materials and objects that have parts of animals or are made from something that comes from an animal, right? By the way, where are my faithful haters? You had a wonderful opportunity to call me an hypocrite by being a vegan and using an animal skin drum. Come on, boys, keep up the pace. But that's the thing, I feel like an hypocrite, and I have that imposter syndrome. I'm vegan, and why do I use a drum made out of animal skin? If I don't kill animals, it would be hypocrisy from my part to pay someone else to kill animals for me, and I just have to buy them in the supermarket and eat them, not having to pass through the most horrible ordeal of taking a life that wants to live, killing a person, right? And solely have the palate pleasure. Practically the same thing here. 15 years ago, I got this drum. I didn't kill the animal. Someone else did it for me. If I really wanted to go traditional and make a bigger and more concise and conscious connection with the spirit animal, I should have been the one to pass through the consequences of spirituality, in such terms of using an animal skin drum, right? I should have been the one to kill and consume the animal flesh and give the right propitiations and make the drum out of its skin and so on and so forth. But I did not do that. This was 15 years ago, 10 years before I became a vegan, so I wasn't considering any of that. Despite all of this, I have created an important and strong connection with my drum, and it has been a very important companion on my spirituality, craft, and even in the way I artistically express myself. Now, even after becoming a vegan, I did not consider this a problem because, in truth, I was not seeing my drum as an animal that was killed, but as an entity with whom I have created a strong relationship with. However, this perception changed in September of 2021, when I've made a post at my Instagram, which, I think it fortunately sort of woke me up concerning what I was using and how this might be a big problem for someone who is a vegan. You see, back in late 2021, I wanted to create awareness concerning a terrible genocide I was only made aware of in that same year. Something I have expressed before a couple of times and in videos as well in the past. The case of murdered Indigenous children of British Columbia in Canada, right? and their bodies having been found in graves at residential schools. Don't let this be forgotten, please. Some of the priests that murdered these children are still alive and have fled here into Europe. And this should be a subject we should definitely continue to talk about, to bring some justice at the very least, and obviously to avoid from happening again elsewhere to other people. Any human being capable of causing harm to children is not a human being, it is a monster. This situation is something that has greatly troubled me, and I was deeply disturbed and depressed by it. We are talking about over 150,000 indigenous children taken from their homes, over 139 residential schools in Canada and many more in the US. More than 5,000 children's bodies have been found until 2021 alone. How many more have been found since then? I don't know. Frankly, I don't want to look into it. It's disturbing and frustrating, as there should be justice at the very least. But well, focusing right now. On that Instagram post where I appear with my drum, I invited people to drum for the children. Throughout the month of October of 2021, I was drumming for the spirits of the innocent ones. And so I have invited people to do the same thing and drum for these indigenous children and for their spirits. On that post, there were people that did not have drums, and they made comments that my post encouraged them to buy these types of drums and start making something with them. This is when I realized that my idea just had a dark side to it, of sorts. As a vegan, incidentally, I have promoted the slaughter of animals for the creation of these types of drums. Unwillingly, I have encouraged people to participate in the market of cruelty towards animals. My thoughts were, fuck. Concerning the drum, I think I can easily go over it, hopefully, because we are talking about something I've started to use 10 years before becoming vegan, and 3 to 4 years before I have started to actually change my life, taking the first steps and taking my first steps towards reducing my consumption of animals and the use of animal products. It's something from before, but it is important. I still use it. It's like clothes made from animals. Some people, upon becoming vegan, they stop using clothes and footwear and whatnot, which is made from animals, which is understandable, absolutely. And if you have the money to completely change your entire outfit, good. And you can always donate the clothes you don't use anymore, great, absolutely outstanding. However, for many of us, even being vegan, for as long as some things can still be used and you can save money, you still use them. As a vegan, you can stop buying products made out of animals. But I think you don't have to throw away the things from before, because that ends up being a waste. It's not very sustainable. You can still use them because they are from before and still serve a purpose. Or you can give them to someone in need. In the case of the drum, it is from before. However, I have created a strong relationship with my drum. It is important to me. It is important on my spirituality and in my work and craft. I will still use it for as long as I can. When it's broken, as a vegan, I won't get a new one. It's over concerning drums made out of animal skins. There are loads of substitutes and sustainable ones as well. This drum, this is part of me. This is part of my journey for the past 15 years. This shall be burned with me. I will only use this one and not any other. There won't be the acquisition of any more animal skin drums once this one is gone. We use the things from before. We have already, things that have been already made and still serve an important purpose. However, as a vegan, we don't have to continue to participate on such markets, because there's substitutes for practically everything now. However, this issue obviously opened up other questions, and that's where witchcraft enters. I mean, I think I could easily write a book on vegan witchcraft, but I've started like a dozen books or so and never got to finish them. There's funnier stuff to do with life. If anyone writes a book on vegan witchcraft, let me know, I'll buy it and review it. But anyway, concerning witchcraft, this kind of raises the question on the use of animal parts in witchcraft. As a vegan and practicing traditional folk magic, what do? Should or should you not continue with the use of animal parts and objects made out of animals? I think this depends a great deal on your approach and what are you actually using and where you are getting it. Starting from the point that witchcraft is a pragmatic expression of animism, we are then aware that what we call spirits or parts of spirits can reside in various things. It is precisely from there that we began with the use of certain materials and certain parts of animals, for the power they have, for what they represent, and for the essence of consciousness and spirit that still lives in them. And then also the whole issue of objects without spirit or personality, that from the moment there is a creation and a consecration of an object and an entire ritual, we deposit spirit in objects, we give identity, and they stop being mere objects and begin to be understood as entities of their own, with their identity and their power, etc. This is where the whole issue of talismans, amulets, charms, the issue of fetishism, etc. comes in. Attached to this comes the idea that if animals have a conscience and spirit, if they are understood as persons of the world, then taking a life is taboo, but can be done in certain extreme moments of life, in certain extreme situations, like avoiding starvation, the sacrifice of a life for another. Animism is quite clear in this. Hunting is not a sport. Hunting and killing is an act of sacrifice, and every act of sacrifice is therefore a ritual or needs a ritual, and the whole method of propitiation of the spirit, of the soul, from whom the body is being robbed and consumed. Animism is also quite clear that the consumption of what is killed is the consumption of souls. The lack of the right propitiation or ritual, or both, can anger the spirit from whom the body was robbed, or it can anger the community of spirits or of persons of the killed individual, and they might seek revenge. Ritual and the right propitiation of souls is necessary to avoid angry spirits, because the consequences of spirits that seek revenge can be devastating for the human community and for the environment. Killing is taboo, however, again, in extreme moments it is necessary, and spirit revenge can be avoided through the right actions, through the ceremony towards the killed individual. If we take into consideration that the animal industry tortures billions of animals, and every year 80 billion land animals alone are murdered, individuals, right? Spirits, persons that have been born, lived and died in terrible conditions and in much suffering and harm, misery and sadness. We are talking about billions of angry spirits, many of which can indeed seek revenge. Now, you think the slaughtering of lives in the animal industry cares about the right conduct and propitiation of souls? I mean, look at the world around us. Look at the state of the world around us and the environment, which obviously can easily be explained through science, facts, the very active, destructive conduct of the human being towards the planet and its lives and all persons. Animal industry is one of the greatest problems we face that is actively causing harm to the planet for a variety of reasons. However, and understandably, there's a lack of a focus on a spiritual level, something that indigenous peoples are well aware of, but not the most or the majority of the world that doesn't live an indigenous life and doesn't have an indigenous animistic perception. On a spiritual level, we are talking about billions of souls that have the right to seek revenge. Think of yourself as a person, an individual who has been robbed of freedom, spending your whole life tortured and sick and violently molested and beaten, and then robbed of your life. If you could, as a spirit, wouldn't you seek revenge for such an unfair, brutal, and monstrous traumatic life and treatment? Now think of 80 billion land animals every year and at least 1 trillion fish killed every year for commercial use. Those seem to be just numbers, but think of these numbers as individuals. How many unpropitiated souls that may seek revenge, and the impact that has on the world and its persons on a spiritual level, which always affects in a very physical way. The sickness of death throughout the land. So now, with this in mind, let's reflect upon the animal parts we are using in traditional witchcraft. How are we using them? Where did we get them? How did the animal die? Natural death? Was it killed? Were there any propitiations of the soul? Any ceremonies in honor of the killed animal? Unfortunately, in the modern world, spirituality has become a business and it is an industry. Even if you are not vegan, you should definitely care about the animals and animal parts you might be using in traditional witchcraft or in your own spirituality and spiritual endeavors in any other form. Let me give you an example. I met a woman. Was this woman, our house is full of animal bones, mostly skulls. It's not just for decoration, but it's also for her own craft, or so she says. She lives in the city, like a huge city, completely surrounded by just heavy urban scenery for miles in every direction. Where is she getting so many animal bones and skulls? Especially of animals literally that literally don't exist in her own country. She's getting them online, and there's no problem with that. Now, the problem with this is that we don't truly know, in the great majority of cases, of course, how these people get all these dead animals in the first place to sell their parts online. Some of them become a huge business, and it makes you wonder if these people spend their whole life in the wilds gathering dead animals, cleaning their corpses and selling their body parts. I mean, you really have to spend a tremendous amount of time out there to find so many dead animals and sell them worldwide to thousands of people in the spiritual business. I mean, I remember living in the countryside, back in the village, very small village, very remote area, literally surrounded by mountains and woods, and you are surrounded by death every day. That's just something you encounter every day out there in the wilds. But not this enormous and very suspicious amount of corpses to the point you can actually sell so much animal bones and skulls and pelts and whatnot. One thing is gathering dead animals. And from an animistic perception, that too has its own rituals and respectfully acknowledging the body or the corpse and propitiating the spirit, because where the dead animal lies in the wilds, the spirit often returns to the earth and its cycles, and removing the corpse is removing it from its natural cycle to rot away in peace, and the bones returning to the earth and to the ecosystem. I've spoken about this before on another video, and the act of respecting everything you encounter and want to take with you. The act of asking for permission is a sign of respect, and everything you gather, you have to have in mind this conscious attitude that you are engaging with the land and its persons, with their habitat, their cycles, their cultures, their society. And so asking for permission to take something with you is an act of respect, and that includes the corpses of animals. Because when you take them, for whichever reasons, you are robbing them from their cycle of rebirth. When you buy online from someone who has such a tremendous amount of animal body parts at the ready every day, You really think these people have the trouble of engaging with corpses in a respectful manner? Worst of all, this great quantity of animal parts and bones and skulls, these people are probably actively killing animals to have the materials to earn money within this spiritual business. Now, of course, it's up to you and your conscience if you truly want to participate in something where people actively deny life to several persons to profit from their body parts, to sell them for spiritual reasons and whichever bullshit they tell you in the manner in which they engage with all of this. Ultimately, the problem isn't even or solely with these people. The problem is with the client, with the person that buys this stuff. And not just because it is paying for the continuous cruelty, but because they are acquiring parts of animals whose bodies were robbed of their cycle of rebirth and whose souls did not have the right propitiation. These body parts with spirit come with angry spirits who then want to seek revenge. And who are they going to mess up with? With the person that actively bought these animal parts and has them on display at home for whichever reasons. I am not saying that all people that sell this kind of stuff online are all people who are actively killing animals to profit from their body parts, because I know at least 2 people that indeed gather animal corpses, give the right propitiations, prepare the whole thing, clean it all, and let the spirit rest or appease the spirit to avoid terrible consequences when these animal parts fall in the hands of the client. These are responsible people. And these are people who gather such things occasionally, and there's a long process, and usually do not have a great collection of this stuff ready to sell at all times and for every request. Usually they announce what they have and what they have been working on, and it's ready to sell on that particular moment and to a small number of people. Now, this woman I met has her house full of animal bones and skulls, and mind you, I'm not saying you should stop working with such materials in your craft. What I'm saying is that it would be good to be more responsible, even for your own good. This woman was absolutely astonished concerning the amount of bad things happening in her life and the amount of bad luck and strange harmful stuff happening to her and within her house, and an overall lack of luck, sadness, despair, and an overall ill-being. I mean, you are literally inviting death into your house and angry entities whose spirits were not properly propitiated. What do people expect? The thing is, you can work with whichever force and energy you want, and whatever entities that are significant to you and your craft, absolutely. However, people have to be responsible, and if they are going to work with such a force as death, they have to understand what they are getting themselves into and be prepared to deal with the consequences. It's not just about a cool display of skulls all over the house, a lovely room of death, and occasionally using the objects for some craft. There's work to be done. There's ritual, ceremony, the right propitiation of souls, protecting yourself, your house, and those around you. It's a powerful force, and it is very dangerous, disrespectful, and naive to invite a force one is not prepared to deal with, and to deal with the consequences due to lack of empathy, which leads to disrespectful behaviors and interactions. If you work with bones in your craft, that's because, at the very least, you understand that there's power in them. There's energy in them. If you understand this, then you already know that you are inviting entities and spirits of persons whose body parts are there and should have a respectful treatment. As a vegan, I obviously do not actively or indirectly or directly or any way participate in the business of killing animals to acquire their body parts to be used in my craft. However, that doesn't mean I won't use bones and wings and skulls and whatnot anyway. It means that as a vegan and as a person with a more animistic approach to this, I have to remind myself that I'm dealing with persons, not inanimate objects. Therefore, everything I gather out there, including animal parts, has to be with a respectful approach and asking for permission, at the very least. Once the work is done, I give it back to nature, preferably where I have found it. The work is done, the spirit has helped, the purpose was achieved, therefore, there's no point in binding this to me. Therefore, I give it back to nature to resume its cycle of rebirth, and to go back to its natural habitat and realm. And I brought with me this little red box you see right here, where I keep such things. And today I take the opportunity to return something to nature to resume its natural cycle of rebirth. So give me a moment, please. All right, see here. This is a bird's whole wing, right? Obviously, as a vegan, I did not kill the bird. I did not pay to have the bird killed. I did not buy this. I did not actively or indirectly or directly or in any way participated in the cruelty business. This animal was already dead when I found it. This is part of a person. I've gathered this, I've taken it with me, I did my own work, it served its purpose. I give thanks and respectfully return this charm to nature to resume its cycle. It's done. It is what I have been talking about here all along, right? To be respectful, conscious about these issues and responsible. To treat persons with respect, to create a relationship of mutual respect and mutual benefit. To be inserted within the cycle and let everyone carry on with their own process of life and rebirth. As a vegan, I still use an animal skin drum. It was from before I went vegan. And I've created a strong relationship with the drum. It is my companion. After it's broken or no longer serves its purpose, I won't buy a new one. There are vegan-friendly substitutes, and this one shall be released, burned with me, because here there was an exchange of spirit, of conscious. It's part of me, and we are bound. It's not an object. It's not just a musical instrument. It's a person with an identity. Shall either be burned with me or pass on to the next person, a trustworthy and respectful person. Who knows who that might be? If that is the desire of this entity to continue on with the work and creating something beneficial through a new person, another person. But that requires a whole other process, because in it, there's part of me as well. And it's not only up to me to decide. Like every relationship in life, there has to be consent from all parts. As a vegan, and part of my spiritual work being traditional folk magic, I can still use bones and other animal parts. However, I do not participate in any way in the slaughter of lives. I gather what is already on display in the natural places of the world. And like any animist, it has to be a conscious gathering, a respectful gathering of materials. Once it's done, I return them. So I very much hope this video was useful. I know there's a considerable amount of animistic vegans and vegan witches, and sometimes there's this struggle with these issues, right? So I hope this was useful, and please share your thoughts and on this subject and the ways in which you engage with this, and what other approaches you have. I'm sure many of us, I included obviously, will be very interested in learning and to give space to broaden our perspective. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, thank you for today. Until we meet again, my dear friends.